Welcome, fellow brave believers. This is Kingdom Cast, and I'm Sean, your host. And this is the podcast where we search for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of God's Word and of the world so we can better relate God's Word to this world. And I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. We've got a fun show tonight. We're going to be picking up in our study into Jubilees, chapter 6 through 10. This is kind of a new series we started on Kingdom Cast that we call What Do You Know About Jubilees? And we might do other books in the future. What do you know about Isaiah? What do you know about, run through some other books as well, but this one is so meaty. There's so much to talk about in Jubilees that it's a shame that this book was withheld from the American canon. Other canons have had it around the world. It was found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. This book it venerates itself theologically, historically, textually. There's some very wonky criticism from people that have not read this book floating around out there, and hopefully shows like this will kind of put to bed some of those unknowledgeable criticisms. That's really all it boils down to. It's unknowledgeable because once you actually dig into the book and you realize people keep saying, "Oh, it's a work of second century, Second Temple Hellenistic. It's got all this Greek influence," and I'm like, "Have you read it?" That's kind of surprising that you would make that assessment because all I see is wonderful expounding upon the Torah and why God gave His instructions to mankind, how He keeps that same instruction in heaven, how all the patriarchs kept it. And the whole book is a conversation between the angels that are on the mountain with Moses for those 40 days and 40 nights, and they're explaining to him how the patriarchs before him kept these same instructions, the same covenant behavior. So to me, it's a gem of a book. It really helps you understand a lot about God's instructions for discipleship. We're excited. Let's jump right into Jubilees, guys. So this is chapter 6, 1 through 5. And so like what we did last time is I'm going to read through the chapters, and I'm going to, as you see, I got some notes inserted in blue, and those notes are going to be basically reference scripture that I'm going to explain as we go to show you just how much this book lines up with what we're familiar with in the American canon of 66. It's truly amazing. This book is truly amazing. It lines up in great capacity. And like I said, it was used by ancient Israelites, and even in other canons around the world. So let's take a look real quick. Jubilees 6, 1 through 5. On the new moon of the third month, he went forth from the ark and built an altar on the mountain. And that's talking about Noah. He made atonement for the earth. He took a kid, made atonement by its blood for all the guilt of the earth. For everything that had been on it had been destroyed, except those that were in the ark with Noah. And he placed the fat thereof on the altar. And he took an ox and a goat and a sheep and the kids, and that's a male lamb or male goat under a year old, and salt, and a turtle dove, and a young of a dove, and placed a burnt offering on the altar, and poured thereon an offering mingled with oil, and sprinkled wine, and strewed frankincense over everything, and caused a goodly savor to arise, acceptable before the Lord. The Lord smelt the goodly savor. He made a covenant with him that there should not be any more a flood to destroy the earth, that all the days of the earth, seed time and harvest, should never cease. Cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night should not change their order, nor cease forever. This is paralleled in Genesis 8, 20 through 22. And you increase you upon the earth, and become many upon it, and be a blessing upon it. The fear of you and the dread of you I will inspire in everything that is on the earth and in the sea. So we actually see this in Genesis 8, 20 through 22, the same exact instance. He's obviously, Noah is a priest. We've talked about this in previous episodes. Noah was taught how to be a priest as it was passed down to him from Enoch to Methuselah down the line. That's why he knows how to build an altar and properly do the right sacrifices to bring before the Lord. What's interesting about this part is that Genesis 8 doesn't actually tell us the details about the altar sacrifice, but it does say Noah built an altar to the Lord. He still would have to know how to do that. This is not the tabernacle, the tent of meeting of those specific blueprint instructions that was given to Aaron and Moses at Mount Sinai. So he's, according to the rest of God's instructions for priests making an altar sacrifice, he would be building an altar of stone raised up off the ground, built of stones that have not been cut by tools, what's called unhewn stones. He's bringing the proper animals. This is actually Shavuot, by the way. Their whole point of him, and he knows what he's doing. This particular sacrifice, the particular month that it's happening in, this is Shavuot, and it explains later, as we will read in later chapters of Jubilees, they were always keeping Shavuot. Shavuot, as we're going to read in this very chapter, has been kept even in heaven since the beginning of creation. So that's why books like this can be so much fun, because we see that they're actually telling you all these, they're explaining, okay, why would Noah build an altar in Genesis 8? Like, what? I thought the Torah wasn't until Mount Sinai. Well, no, that's man-made theology. That's dispensation, supersessionism theology. That's not in Scripture. That's Judaism, idolizing Moses and creating their own man-made traditions and theology. That's not scriptural. So we don't ascribe to that here at Kingdom Cast. We just want to stick with what the words in the Bible say. Clearly, Noah knows how to do an altar sacrifice. So he goes on in Jubilees chapter 6, 6 through 10. He says, "Behold, I've given you unto you all the beasts and all winged things and everything that moves on the earth and the fish in the waters and all things for food. As the green herbs, I've given you all things to eat." Did you guys notice? I didn't really make any notes about this specifically, but there is, many of the translations in Genesis 9 that parallels this moment here. There's an insertion of the word now. So a lot of the translators will take the liberty and they'll be like, oh, see, in Genesis 9, it says, now I give you all this food to eat. So they'll say, oh, he wasn't supposed to eat meat before that. No, that's not right. The whole point, like, he just brought all these animals for a sacrifice. So even if you didn't have the book of Jubilees, it would require you to understand God's laws, his ways for a priest to make a sacrifice with animals. That's the whole point. You building an altar. So, yeah. So in Genesis 8, before Genesis 9, when we get this moment where God says, I'll give you all things to eat, just don't eat the blood of it thereof. He's repeating the same thing he told Adam in Genesis 1, 29 and 30. I've talked about this in previous videos. You have to go into the Greek. There's a lot of translator insertions in the modern Masoretic text, but if you go into the Greek in Genesis 1, 29, 30, you'll see that it does not say the word to, the little article to, to, which gives people the impression that God was speaking to Adam and saying, I give you all the green trees and the herbs and the fruit-bearing seeds of the trees, and to the animals and to the birds and to the beasts of the field. No, that to is inserted there. He's telling Adam, I give you all the fruit-bearing trees, the green herbs and everything, and all the animals, the flying things, the fruit, all the things that he would have considered food, the things that Noah was food, because he knew what was clean and what was unclean, because God's law is eternal. So you get more of a clearer picture, if you will, from the book of Jubilees. Is it any wonder rabbis reject this book? Verse 7, but flesh, with the life thereof, with the blood you shall not eat, for the life of all the flesh is in the blood, lest your blood of your lives be required. At the hand of every man, at the hand of every beast, I will require the blood of man. Whosoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for the image of God made he man. And you, increase and multiply on the earth. And Noah and his sons swore that they would not eat any blood that was in the flesh. And he made a covenant before the Lord God forever throughout all the generations of the earth in this month. That's because Shavuot is renewal of the covenant every year in the third month. So if we go on down here, this is parallel, this whole part here is paralleled in Genesis chapter 9, verses 1 through 7. So as you can see here, you just have to look at your translations, but ultimately, everything is exactly the same. You just get a little bit more detail in the book of Jubilees. We go here to Jubilees 6, 11 through 15. It says, now on this account he spoke to you that you should make a covenant with the children of Israel in this month upon the mountain with an oath. Now, I'm just going to pause real quick, guys, just for those in case you didn't see part 1, if you didn't see chapters 1 through 5 breakdown. The narration, if you will, in verse 11 that we just read, that's the angel of the presence. It's not a pre-incarnate Yeshua. I know a lot of people love that theory, but it's just not. And I know the Aramaic texts, I know there's a lot of prominent people out there that love to push the idea that, it's the Aramaic text calling the word of the Lord. You guys, there's Galatians 3:19, Hebrews 2:1, Acts 7:53, the whole book of Jubilees, and even in Exodus itself, it says it was an angel. It's not the pre-incarnate Yeshua. He wasn't sent to become a priest before he becomes a priest. The pre-incarnate Yeshua angel, the angel of the presence, which is not a pre-incarnate Yeshua, that angel of the presence that's talking to Moses right here in verse 11 and is leading Israel out of the Exodus in the book of Exodus. It stays with them throughout the book of Numbers. That guy, that angel, the cloud by day, fire by night, that's hovering over, and sometimes he drops down and speaks to Moses face to face. That angel is representing the Father. He is doing a priestly duty in the Melchizedek priesthood order, higher than Levitical, higher than Levi, higher than Aaron, bringing forward on the ground the sacrifice. That's why he oversees them and makes sure they're proper. That's why he's given this placement to accept or to oversee, if you will, these sacrifices that are going to God, right? Because the angels are a priesthood as well. They're a higher authority priesthood than man. Yeshua was not sent to be a Melchizedek priest before he was given the role of a Melchizedek priest. It's really very simple. He's only given the role of Melchizedek priest at the appointed time after his resurrection. He's glorified in a man's body, glorified man, ascended to heaven, sat at the right hand of the Father, made high priest according to the Melchizedek order. He was not in that position beforehand. There'd be no reason for him to come down to the earth and go through the whole process if he was already in that position beforehand. It's very simple, guys. All right, Jubilees 6, 11 through 15. This is the moment where this angel of the presence is talking to Moses, and he's saying directly to Moses on top of the mountain. The reason why you're hearing this instruction is because the reason why God told you, why Yahweh is telling you through this instruction to make a covenant with the children of Israel in this month upon the mountain with an oath, is that you should sprinkle blood upon them, because all the words of the covenant which the Lord made with them forever. So he just told the back history of Noah keeping this covenant. Now the angel turns and talks to Moses, and he's like, this is why you're doing this too. In this same month on the mountain, you're getting all these instructions for keeping Shavuot. It's because this is the history of Shavuot. It's beautiful, guys. Verse 12, and this testimony is written concerning you, that you should observe it continually, you being Moses and all of Israel, so that you should not eat any blood of beasts or birds or cattle during all the days of the earth, and that man who eats the blood of beasts or of cattle or birds during all the days of the earth, he and his seed shall be rooted out of the land. And you command the children of Israel to eat no blood, so that their names and their seed may be before the Lord your God continually. And we're going to look at the parallel in Leviticus here in just a minute. Verse 14, he says, and for this law there's no limit of days, for it's forever. For this law, for what? For this Torah law is forever. There's no limit of days. It didn't start. It doesn't stop. Mankind, since Adam was created, and the angels as well, they do not eat blood. That is occultic. That is wickedness. It's a transgression of the law. This is forever. The dietary laws of God are forever. Verse 14, and for this law there's no limit of days, for it is forever. They shall observe it throughout the generations, so that they may be continually supplicating on your behalf with blood before the altar every day, and at the time of morning and evening they shall seek forgiveness on your behalf perpetually before the Lord, that they may keep it and not be rooted out. Guys, we see that. That's the instructed of the daily sacrifice. It's instructed in Exodus and Numbers. Verse 15, and he gave it to Noah and his sons as a sign that there should not be again a flood on the earth. And let's look at the parallel passage here in Leviticus 17, 10 through 14. This is the instruction to the Israelites. If anyone from the house of Israel or a foreigner living among them eats any blood, I'll set my face against that person and cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. And if I've given it to you to make an atonement for your souls upon the altar, for it's the blood that makes atonement for the soul. Therefore, I say to the Israelites, none of you may eat blood, nor may any of the foreigner living among you eat blood. Let me get a drink. 1 second, guys. And if any of the Israelite or foreigner living among you hunts down a wild animal or bird that may be eaten, he must drain its blood and cover it with dirt. For the life of all the flesh is in its blood. Therefore, I've told the Israelites, you must not eat the blood of any living thing, because the life of all its flesh is in the blood. Whoever eats it must be cut off. So, guys, think about this for a minute. What has been the context of the story, the moment of Jubilees, like I've talked about, the angel of the presence, and there's multiple angels actually on the mountain, but there's specifically one speaking to Moses. This is the same one that was with him in the cloud. And this is why Paul in Galatians 3:19 says that the law was ordained by angels on the mountain. That means it was taught to Moses. Okay? So this is what they're doing. They're teaching to Moses why the law is here, it's eternal, why you're going to keep it, why it's a part of the covenant. This is the behavior of the Creator. This is the kind of behavior you're expected to practice and follow if you want to be a disciple of the Creator, if you want to be in covenant with the Creator. So he's telling them at Shavuot, this is kind of the interesting context here of the scenario that they're on the mountain in the third month at Shavuot, Exodus 24, 1 through 9, 1 through 10. They just had the Shavuot meal. The elders of Israel, Moses and Aaron, they saw the Elohim of Israel as they were up on the mountain having the meal. That's the Elohim. I know it's a translator insertion. A lot of people think it means Yahweh. It does not. They saw the angels. It's right there in the text, Exodus 24:10. So the point is that they're having Shavuot. It's right there. And with Shavuot, they're getting this extra emphasis on this instruction: don't eat blood, guys. Don't eat blood. Why? Because Shavuot's the renewal of the covenant. And this was like one of the big things. If you're part of Israel, if you're a part of covenant with Yahweh, you don't eat things strangled. You don't eat things with blood in it. You drain its blood. You cover your dirt over the blood. That's the Torah instruction. This is also in Jubilees we're going to look at here in a minute. And think about this. What happens in Acts chapter 2? They come back for Shavuot. Everyone's there for Shavuot. We call it Pentecost in the Greek in Acts 2. And also think about in Acts 18 and in Acts 20, you have this very unique moment where Paul is rushing back for Shavuot. He's trying to keep it too. He's trying to sail back because he was on his missionary journeys. You also have in Acts 15, the very first instructions that James and John and Peter, the elders and Jerusalem of the disciples, they are instructing Paul and Barnabas to teach converts in outer regions of Judea. The very first thing that new converts need to practice is this command right here. Amongst, no fornication, no unclean, don't eat anything with blood in it, don't eat or drink blood. This is like a huge thing. It's like, so guys, this is the Shavuot was the renewal of the yearly covenant. And this was the instruction provided immediately with that. And then here we got the disciples saying, look, new converts, this is the first and foremost the thing that they need to be doing. Stop eating blood. I think that's interesting. I don't want to make too much out of it, but I think it's interesting. So Miriam New is asking, so who was the word of Yah? Guys, it's very simple. The word of Yah is going to be whomever he sends with his word. Think about it like this. Not only angels are called messengers of the Most High, they're called Hebrews 1:14. They're spiritual messengers sent out to help those who inherit in salvation. Sometimes they bring redemption, as far as like physical salvation. They save people from a bad circumstance, like in the days of Hezekiah, the days of Isaiah. 185,000 Assyrians besieged Jerusalem. One angel comes down and brings them salvation. Now, this is not eternal salvation, but he's bringing them physical salvation. He's physically redeeming them out of that bad situation, okay? This is the way that the angel of the presence is spoken of in the Exodus as well, in the Psalms. It calls Yahweh redeemed them out of Israel with his angel of the presence. And Malachi chapter 2, verse 4 through 7, priests, men, are called the mouthpiece of God. That means they're to have the word of Yah. Remember, they had the Urim and the Thummim, they had the breastplate of righteousness. It says in Malachi chapter 2, verse 4 through 7, they're supposed to be the mouthpiece of God. They're supposed to be the messenger of the Most High that would actually have his words in their mouth, so the Father would trust faithfully that they would communicate them to the people properly. So whenever you see all these passages that are assumed all throughout the Old Testament, talking about the word of the Lord came to him and he said this, then the priest said this, and the prophet said this. Guys, it's pre-incarnate Yeshua is not showing up every single time. I don't even know if he shows up at all, because from my understanding, he's hidden in the bosom of the Father until he's first revealed at his first coming as a man. Just my thoughts. So it's very simple, guys. It's very simple. All right, guys. So let's keep going here, and we'll go get through 6, and we're probably going to breeze through 9. So I'm spending a little bit more time on 6. Verse 16, he says, he set his bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant, that there should not be again a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. We found this in Genesis 9, 12 through 16. And for this reason, it's ordained and written on the heavenly tablets that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year to renew the covenant every year. Like I've been talking about, this is Shavuot. This is the Feast of Weeks. It's also called the Feast of First Fruits. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah. 26 Jubilees, 5 weeks of years. And Noah and his sons observed it for 7 Jubilees and 1 week of years, till the day of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death, his sons did away with it until the days of Abraham. That means they went into rebellion, guys. This means after Noah died, the kids started playing around, right? The new generation stopped observing what grandfather Noah told them, and they started messing up. We're going to read about that in chapter 10 as well. He also goes into it in chapter 7 because he sees it happening. He sees it starting to happen. And so this is why he's desperately trying to show his sons and grandsons, these are the commandments of the Lord. Keep these at all costs so we don't wind up with the same circumstances that we had from before the flood. So it goes on in verse 19 to say, but Abraham observed it. Abraham kept Shavuot. Wow, guys, this is way before Mount Sinai. Isaac and Jacob and his children observed it up to your days. That's the days of Moses. And in your days, the children of Israel forgot it until you celebrated it anew on this mountain. That's Exodus 19 through 24. Moses leads the Israelites out to the wilderness to worship God, 3 days journey in the wilderness to Mount Sinai to celebrate Shavuot. Verse 20, and do you command the children of Israel to observe this festival in all their generations for a commandment to them. 1 day in the year, in this month, they shall celebrate the festival. All right, let's take a quick look at the rainbow. Genesis 9, 12 through 16. This was the sign of the covenant, and it also happened to be at Shavuot. How beautiful is that, right? So I don't know. Maybe it's just an extra special Shavuot if you see a rainbow that day. How beautiful. But this is the same instruction, the same sign of the covenant between Jubilees 6 and Genesis 9. We also have Leviticus 23, the instruction. It's also in Exodus 23 and Numbers 28, but this is the instruction again in Leviticus 23, 15 through 16, From the day after the Sabbath, the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you're to count off 7 full weeks. You shall count off 50 days until the day of the seventh Sabbath, and then present an offering of new grain to the Lord. On that same day, you're to proclaim a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work. This is to be a permanent statute wherever you live for the generations to come. Think about this, guys. Wherever you live. You know how many people always, and being someone that talks about God's law, as God's Torah, that Jesus, the behavior of Jesus, and that hasn't changed. Jesus Christ, same yesterday, forever. Yahweh says, I change not. Their behavior does not change, and they said that his law, God's wisdom and righteousness and light, his Torah, is his behavior, and he asks us to practice that as a disciple. So you run into people that have, unfortunately, been very confused with something called dispensation theology. And they think, oh, well, the Torah was just for the Jewish people. I'm a Gentile, so I just believe in Jesus, and I'm a disciple, but they have no working definition of what that means. And they forget that there's neither Jew nor Greek in Christ, that we're all one. They forget, actually, Galatians 3 and some other places, right? So they just, because this is the unfortunate, misguided teaching of dispensation theology. Look right here, though, Leviticus 23:21, it says this is a permanent statute wherever you live for generations to come. So in this modern age, if you're a disciple of Yeshua, if you follow this channel, if you follow other channels out there that talk about the understanding that Torah is a part of our discipleship, because we're learning actually the behavior of God, the Son, and the angels, and that is nothing but good, right? It can never be bad. It's not, no, there's no way it's an enslavement, right? Because it's literally their behavior. And they'll say, well, why you're not Israel, you don't have a temple, you can't keep these. I'm like, hey, it says wherever I live to celebrate Shavuot. I think that's fascinating, guys. I don't have the scriptures to parallel right here, right now, but if you go into Tobit chapter 2, verse 1, you see Tobit, after he was part of the tribe of Naphtali that had been invaded by the Syrian kings in 2 Kings 15, and then he's taken over into across the Euphrates, east of the Euphrates, in the land of Ecbatana. You see that he's celebrating Shavuot, Pentecost, with his wife outside the land of Israel, while he's in enemy territory, captured by the enemy. No, he can't go to the temple. He can't bring sacrifice. He can't enjoy the joy and the festivities of everything happening with the priests and everything at Jerusalem. So he just has a memorial meal with his wife. It's that simple. It's that beautiful. So that's what my wife and I do. As we're in the land of our enemies, we're scattered. We just have a memorial meal and celebrate Shavuot. So if we go on here, we're going to look at Jubilees 6:21-25. It says, for it is the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruits. This just lets you know that it's the same. It has multiple names, Feast of Weeks and Feast of First Fruits. This feast is twofold and of a double nature, according to what's written and engraved concerning and celebrate it. For I've written in the book of the first law, and that which I've written for you, that you should celebrate it in its season, one day in the year. And I explained it to you. Its sacrifices that the children of Israel should remember and should celebrate it throughout their generations in this month, one day in every year. And on the new moon of the first month, on the new moon of the fourth month, on the new moon of the seventh month, and on the new moon of the 10th month are the days of remembrance, and the days of the seasons, and the 4 divisions of the year. These are written and ordained as a testimony forever. Noah ordained them for himself as feasts for the generations forever, so that they have become thereby a memorial unto him. And on the new moon of the first month, he was bidden to make for himself an ark, and on that day the earth became dry, and he opened the ark. On the new moon of the fourth month, the mouths of the dips of the abyss beneath were closed. On the new moon of the seventh month, all the mouths of the abysses of the earth were opened, and the waters began to descend into them. And on the new moon of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and Noah was glad. On this account, he ordained them for himself as feasts for a memorial forever, and thus they are ordained. And they placed them on the heavenly tablets. Each had 13 weeks, from one to another, past the memorial, from the first to the second to the third, and the third to the fourth. And all the days of the commandment will be 52 weeks of days, and these will make the entire year complete. That's 364 days. Thus it's engraved and ordained on the heavenly tablets. So guys, they're trying to say that this instruction is actually written as instruction on heavenly tablets. I think this is fascinating. Isaiah 66:22-23, we see the parallel of the new moon celebrations being kept in the millennial reign after Yeshua returns. Verse 22 says, for just as the new heavens and the new earth which I will make will endure before me, declares Yahweh, so your descendants in your name will endure. From one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all mankind will come to worship before me, says Yahweh. So guys, this will be, Torah is kept in the millennial reign. So that will be a wonderful day for all those who are misguided and confused about it now. Jubilees 6:31-35 says, there is no neglecting this commandment for a single year or from year to year, and command you, the children of Israel, that they observe the years, according to this reckoning, 364 days. And these will constitute a complete year. They will not disturb its time from days and from its feasts, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony. They will not leave out any day or disturb any feasts. But If they do neglect and do not observe them according to this commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from their order. They will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged, and they will neglect their ordinances. All the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons, the seasons, the Sabbaths. They will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For I know, and from henceforth will I declare it to you. It's not of my own devising, for the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feasts of the covenant, and walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles, after their errors and after their ignorance. So, guys, yes, thank you, Ryan. Please hit the like button if you're enjoying this. It helps us share it with your socials. It gets us around the algorithms. In case you didn't catch what he just read there at the very end, it says, "This is the division of days and the feast of the covenant, the walk according to the feast of the covenant, and not according to the feast of the Gentiles." Right. So he's explaining this whole the breakdown that he's given Moses. Now, at the very beginning in chapter 1, like we talked about last time, the book of Jubilees is called the division of days. The division of days. Think about that. He just explained the new moons. There's 91 days in between. There's 7 days in between the Sabbaths. There's 12 months in between Shavuot. There's 12 months in between Day of Atonement. There's 12 months in between the Day of Trumpets. 12 months between all the feasts, unleavened bread and Sukkot. The year, 364 days, they're divided up according to Sabbaths and feasts. The new moons. The book of Jubilees literally translates to Sabbaths and feasts and new moons. That's what the book is meaning. That's what it's explaining. That's why all these chapters we're going to go through, certain things are happening on these certain times around these feast days. And it's telling you this is the Father's calendar throughout the year that he keeps. This is what he does. This is his behavior throughout the year. It's the division of days. This is what's written on the heavenly tablets. This is what the angels in heaven follow as well. You want to know what they're doing in heaven? This book is telling you. Hopefully it's encouraging to you. Hopefully. All right, guys. So it goes on, and it says 36 to 38, "For there will be those who will surely make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year, 10 days too soon." By the way, that's explained in 1 Enoch, and you can even do the math in 1 Enoch 83. "For this reason, the years will come upon them when they disturb the order and make an abominable day, the day of testimony, and they'll make an unclean day, a feast day. And they will confound all the days." Remember, it's talking about those who forget the covenant ways, right? And they start practicing error. It says they'll make the holy with the unclean day with the holy will be mixed, for they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. And for this reason, I command and testify to you that you may testify to them. For after your death, your children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. What do we have today, guys? 365 and a half? It's interesting, huh? "And for this reason, they will go wrong as the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals. They will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh." Whoa, there's another dietary instruction, right? Leviticus 11, 1 through 3, 8 through 12, and 20 through 21. The different types of flesh that are clean and acceptable to eat. You can't eat all types of flesh. You can only eat certain types that the Father said is actual food, that he calls clean food. Jubilees is full of Torah, full of it. Jubilees 7. Yes, Miriam's new. It is all happening right now. We're literally in the Jubilees 23 talks about the times we're in as well. We're in moments of prophecy. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 through 3. We're actually in right now, right before the resurrection, before the coming of the Lord. We're in that moment, that beautiful prophesied moment where wherever we've been scattered under the heavens, we're calling to mind his commandments. That's why I'm talking about them now. That's why I have an entire channel for 3.5 years that's been talking about them. So we're smack dab in the middle of prophecy, and we have to have the expectation of our Messiah to return to look forward to. All right, guys. Jubilees chapter 7, 1 through 5. "In the 7th week, in the first year thereof, in this Jubilee, Noah planted vines on the mountain on which the ark had rested, named Lubar, one of the Arad mountains. They produced fruit in the 4th year. He guarded their fruit and gathered it in this year in the 7th month." Sounds like the month of harvest, right? "He made wine therefrom and put it in a vessel, kept it until the 5th year, until the first day, and on the new moon of the first month." As we just read back in chapter 6, he kept it until the first new moon feast of the year, which is the first day of the first month, the head of the month of the first month. Verse 3, "He celebrated with joy the day of this feast. He made a burnt sacrifice unto the Lord, 1 young ox, a ram, 7 sheep, each a year old, a kid of goats, that he might make atonement thereby for himself as for his sons. Oh my goodness! Listen to what I'm reading, guys. He did what? He sacrificed to who? To what? He sacrificed to the Lord. Sacrifice for atonement for himself and for his sons. What month is this? Oh, this is a atonement sacrifice, or is a new moon festival, just so we read in Numbers 28. I think it's verses 1 through 6. Or no, it's Numbers 29, 1 through 6. Guys, it's all here. He's celebrating Torah. He's doing Torah. He goes on to say, this is Noah continues. He says, and he prepared the first kid, placed some of its blood on the flesh that was on the altar which he had made, and all the fat that he laid on the altar where he made the burnt sacrifice, and the ox and the ram and the sheep, and he laid all their flesh upon the altar, and he placed all their offerings mingled with oil upon it, and afterwards he sprinkled wine on the fire which he had previously made on the altar, and he placed incense on the altar, and caused a sweet savor to ascend acceptable before the Lord his God. Guys, remember what the priests were instructed to do in Leviticus? We also see the angels doing this in heaven in Revelation chapter 5, bringing the incense before the Lord in the temple. This is Noah. Not only is he laying an altar, he's doing altar sacrifice, but he's literally bringing incense as well. He is a priest, guys. He is a priest. 6 through 10. And he rejoiced and drank of this wine, he and his children with joy. It was evening, and when he went into his tent, he being drunk, he lay down and slept, and was uncovered in his tent as he slept. And Ham saw Noah, his father, naked, and he went forth, and he told his two brothers outside the tent. Shem took his garment and arose, he and Japheth, and they placed the garment on their shoulders and went backwards and covered the shame of their father. Their faces were backward. Noah awoke from his sleep and knew all that his younger son had done unto him. And he cursed his son and said, Cursed be Canaan, and slave servant shall he be unto his brethren. You guys, this is the exact passage that we see in Genesis 9:18 through 25. So much speculation from this passage. People think that Ham actually did something homosexual with Noah. Some people think that he did something egregious, ancestral with his mother. They pull from scripture about uncovering your father's nakedness, Leviticus 18, a whole bunch of other places. That is not what happened here. Some people even think that the child Canaan was an offspring of Ham having a sexual relationship with his mother by force. That is not what happened here. Jubilees tells you very clearly what happened here. Okay? It's very simple. And we're going to explain why he's cursed, because it also explains that as well. We wouldn't have all these rampant theories if they would have just left this book in our canon. So let's go on, and we'll keep reading in Jubilees and hear the rest of the story. Jubilees 7:11 through 15. Noah blessed Shem and said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and God shall dwell in the dwellings of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Ham knew that his father had cursed his younger son. He was displeased that he had cursed his son, and he parted from his father, he and his sons with him, Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Guys, did you see this? Verse 13. Ham knew that his father Noah cursed his younger son. Canaan is already born. In fact, for my math, from later references in the book, he's 2 years old at this point. Ham did not sleep with his mother. Ham did not do anything homosexual with Noah. Ham disgraced his father. He broke a commandment to honor your father and mother. He disgraced his father by seeing his nakedness and going and telling his brothers outside the tent about it. That's why the brothers did not disgrace their father, didn't even turn their head to look, and went to cover the shame, the nakedness of their father. This is literally just him breaking one of the 10 commandments. But it was a big deal because he didn't take the time to respectfully cover his father up. He went out, and what seems like he had a bad attitude and went out and told his other friends, probably joking about it, right? Like, oh, I saw he's drunk, he's laid out, I saw his butt. So this was a big deal. So at this point, he'd already had 4 kids. He already had these 4 kids. He gets mad. He leaves at that moment after this went down. And he's ashamed. He's embarrassed. And Noah, who's a priest, which means is a righteous judge, he says, well, Canaan's going to be cursed, and he's going to be a servant to Shem as a result of all this. Now, is Noah directly infringing upon Canaan's future? Could Canaan have chosen a different path? 100% absolutely, if he'd been repentant. But we're going to see here later, but it wasn't about It wasn't about Noah having the power to say this as a curse the way witches try to curse people and warlocks try to curse people in the occult. It's not like that. Noah knew this is the disposition of the father that's raising these boys. These boys are not going to be serving Yahweh. But he was also a prophet, and he knew what was going to happen because this, just like all the prophets, the Spirit of the Lord would tell them. There's some, they'll see a vision, they'll see things play out in the future, and it actually references this: how Noah remembered what was prophesied through him about Shem, specifically Shem's portion of land and how Canaan interacts with that. We're going to get there before we end the show tonight, so stick with us, okay? All right, guys. So he goes on to say in verse 14, Ham, he built for himself a city and called its name after the name of his wife. This is hard to say. Ne'elah Tamauk. Yeah, I don't know if I said it right. Verse 15, Japheth saw it, and he became envious of his brother, and he too built for himself a city. He called its name after the name of his wife, Adatananeses. Sounds like you're speaking in tongues. Adatananeses. I can't even say it. Interesting. Jubilees 7:16-20. And then Shem dwelt with his father Noah. He built a city close to his father on the mountain, and he too called its name after the name of his wife, Sedeketelebab. Man, that sounds like a stuttering rapper. Sedeketelebab. Okay, I think that's right. Anyway, verse 17 says, and behold, these three cities are near Mount Lubar, and Sedeketelebab, fronting the mountain on its east, and Nael Ta'amuk on the south, and Adatananeses toward the west. Sorry, guys, I'm really butchering these names. These are the sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, and Arphaxad. This son was born 2 years after the flood. Shem also had Lud and Aram. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. These are the sons of Noah. Well, it's Japheth, but it attributes them back to Noah. There's his grandsons. It's weird wording, I know. Verse 20, in the 28th Jubilee, Noah began to enjoin upon his sons the ordinances and commandments and all the judgments that he knew, and he exhorted his sons to observe right behavior. That's what that word righteousness means. He's wanting to observe the behavior of the Creator. He says to cover the shame of their flesh, to bless their Creator, to honor father and mother, to love their neighbor, to guard their souls from fornication, uncleanness, and all iniquity. We see these expounds, just a couple of these, like honor your father and mother. It's in Exodus 20, verse 12, and Leviticus 19:18, is to, of course, love your neighbor as yourself. This is Noah, way before Mount Sinai, giving the instructions of the Creator's eternal behavior to his sons and his grandsons. That's why if we go back up, it says, he began to enjoin. That word enjoin means to urgently teach his sons. Because there's a reason for this, because of what just happened with Ham. Ham had a horrible attitude. He was not honoring his father and mother. And he left the house. After being reprimanded for that, he left the house and moved away. He's not respecting his father still. So Noah's like, all right, man, I gotta really kind of like focus here and teach my sons and their grandsons these clans that are quickly sprouting up, and I make sure they understand the commands of the Lord, if it hasn't been obvious already, right? So this is why he's starting to teach them as much as he knew the eternal commands of God. So he goes down and he tries to teach them that. And he explains, verse 21, for owing to these three things, this is the three. Let's go back and read the three things real quick. Wants to guard their souls from fornication, uncleanness, and all iniquity. Okay, so because he says, he claims those are the three things that caused the flood. He says, for owing to these three things came the flood upon the earth, namely, owing to the fornication, wherein the watchers against the law of their ordinances went whoring after the daughters of men, and took to themselves wives of all which they chose, and they made the beginning of uncleanness. So guys, think about all the people from the Southern Baptist the seminaries that go through great leaps and mental gymnastics and theological twisting in order to say that the watchers, they want to ignore the watchers, they ignore that word altogether, but they don't believe in Genesis 6 as it's plainly written. They don't believe angelic, rebellious angels actually took wives from mankind and had babies with them. They go into all these other explanations, but they don't want to take, if this had been in our Bible the whole time, same with book First Enoch, we would have never even had that contention, that disagreement, that argument. It would be plain and simple. I think it's already plain and simple in the books that we have remaining, but this is even more clear. Verse 22, They, that's the watchers who took wives, they beget sons, the Nephilim. They were all unlike. They devoured one another, and the giants slew the Nephil, and the Nephil slew the Eljo, and the Eljo slew mankind, and then mankind slew one another. So this is this violence that's up on the earth that Genesis 6, 1-5 talks about. Verse 23, everyone sold himself to work iniquity and to shed much blood. The earth was filled with iniquity. And after this, they sinned against the beasts and the birds and all that moves and walks on the earth, and much blood was shed on the earth. Every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually. The Lord destroyed everything from off the face of the earth because of the wickedness of their deeds and because of the blood which they had shed in the midst of the earth. He destroyed everything. This, of course, we find in Genesis 6, 1-5. Now, as a real quick caveat, there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, see, this is when the Watchers and the giants, their offspring, they introduced cannibalism, which was eating of meat, and they misaligned the idea of what actually clean food is. And so those many people, I've even seen them trying to use this passage here, and in verse 24, it says, after this, they sinned against the birds and the beasts and all that moves and walks on the earth, and they shed much blood. Guys, there was chimeras that were being created before the flood, just like after the flood. So as we've already read, Noah, and I would say even Genesis 4, all the way back to Adam, they knew which animals were for the purpose of food, which animals were not. So this isn't about the first time men ate meat. It's not about that. They already knew what was food and what was not. So this is just, there's, again, talking about all the wickedness that was instilled by the Watchers through their children, the giants as well. Of course, we have all this parallel in Genesis 6, 1-5. Jubilees 7, 26-30. Let me make this a little bigger for everybody. It says, and we were left, I and you, my sons, and everything that entered with us into the ark. And behold, I see your works before me, that you do not walk in righteousness. For in the path of destruction you have begun to walk. You are parting one from another, and you are envious one of another. And so it comes that you are not in harmony, my sons, with each other. And for I see and behold, the demons have begun their seductions against you and against your children. And now I fear in your behalf that after my death you will shed blood upon men upon the earth, and that you too will be destroyed from the face of the earth. For whosoever shed man's blood, and whosoever eats the blood of any flesh, shall all be destroyed from the earth. So guys, this is what I was talking about from chapter 7, from what happened with Ham, leading into him realizing, he admits it right here in verse 26. He's like, for I see your works, your deeds, your behavior. I see them before me, that you're not walking in righteousness with each other. You're walking in the path of destruction. You've already begun to do this, that you're parting from one another, and pretty soon you're going to be warring and killing each other. He's like, and you're not in harmony with each other. Why? Because they're not doing Torah. So this is where he talks about the demons. He's going to explain that reference here in chapter 10. We're going to understand the origin of demons, but this is Noah. He's evaluating his sons and grandsons and their behavior, and they're not acting right. They're acting like all that bad behavior he witnessed before the flood. So he goes on in verse 29, says, and there shall not be left any man that eats blood, or that sheds the blood of man on the earth, nor shall there be any left to him any seed or descendant living under heaven. For into Sheol shall they go, and into the place of condemnation shall they descend. Into the darkness of the deep shall they all be removed by a violent death. Think about this for 1 second, guys. Why does he go from verse 26 to verse 28? Noah then says, he goes from, look, I see the demons are seducing you into all kinds of non-harmonious behavior. You're striving with each other. You're fighting with each other. You're walking in destruction. And then he starts talking to him about eating blood. Think about this for a minute, guys, because they're picking up the ways of the Watchers. This is why we're going to, not everything in the book of Jubilees is 100% chronological. Just like in Genesis, it's not. Just like in all the books in the Bible, it's not always 100% chronological. At the end of this chapter, the very next verse, the first 4 verses of the next chapter, it's going to explain to us where they suddenly picked up the behavior of the Watchers and why they suddenly started doing this behavior again. So right now, this is Noah realizing, what's going on here, man? This looks like before the flood. I'm like sons and grandsons are walking violently with each other, or even eating and drinking blood. What does that mean, guys? They're doing the ways of the occult. They're doing the ways of the Watchers. Like I've showed in my Investigating Babylon series that we do here in Kingdom Cast. The people before, this is after the flood that we're reading about, and this is before the Tower of Babel. And as I showed in my Investigating Babylon series, there's all this evidence, and even in the writings of Josephus and other people, that they were already worshiping false gods before the Tower of Babel, still within the lifespan that Noah was still alive. Because remember, he lived 350 years after the flood. And his sons and grandsons they left the covenant behavior of walking in righteousness, and they started doing the ways of the occult. They picked up the writings of the Watchers. And we're going to get to chapter 8, where it tells us how they found it. So verse 29 and 30, verse 30 says, there shall be no blood seen upon you of all the blood there shall be all the days in which you have killed any beast or cattle or whatever flies upon the earth, and worked you a good work to your souls by covering that which has been shed on the face of the earth. So again, Noah is instructing more Torah from Leviticus 17, 12, and 13, that any blood that's spilled, you want to cover with dirt. You don't want to just let it out. Let it remain out. You definitely don't want to eat it. Now, there was a ritualistic culture, there was an occult ritualistic belief that went along with eating the blood of animals, that you would gain its life force and its courage and its strength. This has been practiced even to modern days with the occult. They still practice this behavior. So I also talked about that. I think it was in part 10 of my Investigating Babylon series, talking about the practices of Babylon part 1. I talked about there, even in the modern day, there's still, even in Europe and other countries, they're doing articles about it, about how eating blood is a cult phenomenon, is what they call it. I'm like, it's age-old cult practice. It's not new. But they are even covering it in the mainstream media, how people are still doing it today. And the same reasons that they give in modern language today is the same reasons we see the occult think about it in times past. And it's a long-standing practice taught to mankind through the Watchers and the Nephilim. So this is what Noah is. That's why he's even mentioning it right here. He's seeing his sons go to the path of destruction. Verse 31 through 35, he says, and you shall not be like him who eats with blood, but guard yourselves that none of you may eat blood before you. Cover the blood, for thus I have been commanded to testify to you and your children together with all flesh. Suffer not the soul to be eaten with the flesh, that your blood, which is your life, may not be required at the hand of any flesh that sheds it upon the earth. For the earth will not be clean from the blood which has been shed upon it, for only through the blood of him that shed it will the earth be purified through all its generations. And now, my children, listen, work judgment and righteousness, that you may be planted in righteousness over the face of the whole earth, and your glory will be lifted up before my God, who saved me from the waters of the flood. And behold, you will go and build yourself cities and plant in them all the plants that are upon the earth, and moreover all fruit-bearing trees. Guys, in case you didn't realize, Jubilees 7:34, Noah is not beating Moses to the punch. Noah is teaching his sons and grandsons the same covenant promises of blessing that we see in Deuteronomy 28, 1 through 2. If you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord, which is everything that was being instructed through Moses and Aaron to the Israelites, which they were getting from Santa meeting, the angel on the mountain, everything that was ordained through the angels to Moses to tell all the people, which is the voice of the Lord. You are careful to follow his commandments. I'm giving you today. The Lord your God will set you high above all the nations, and all these blessings will come on you and overtake you if you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Now it goes on to list all that stuff out later in Deuteronomy 28. I just want to give you the quick preface. A lot of you already are familiar with this verse, guys. Literally, Noah is telling his children the same thing in Jubilees 7. Verse 36, then he talks about them planting trees. Remember, he's like, if you do this, you'll go and you'll have the best of the land. The Father will be good to you. He'll lift you high up upon all the nations. That's the promise of the kingdom and the royal priesthood. But you will be blessed in this life too. And he goes on to say, verse 36, for 3 years, the fruit of everything that is eaten will not be gathered. He's talking about the trees that are planted, right? And in the 4th year, its fruit will be accounted holy, and they will offer the first fruits acceptable for God Most High. You guys remember we talked earlier about how he planted the tree, the vineyard, and he didn't eat it until the 5th year. He didn't actually get drunk from the wine of the vineyard until the 5th year. That he was following Torah, and he's teaching his kids to do the same thing right here, even with the husbandry of the land and planting trees and when to harvest and when to wait. He says, who created, Most High God created heaven and earth and all things. Let them offer in abundance the first of the wine and oil as first fruits on the altar of the Lord, who receives it, and what is left let the servants of the house of the Lord eat before the altar which receives it. And in the 5th year make you the release, so that you release it in righteousness and uprightness, and you shall be righteous. That means you shall have right behavior, and all that you plant will prosper. This is Leviticus 19, 23 through 25. When you enter the land and you plant any kind of tree for food, you shall regard the fruit as forbidden. For 3 years it will be forbidden to you. It must not be eaten. But in the 4th year, all its fruit must be consecrated as a praise offering to the Lord. But in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit. Thus your harvest will be increased. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Verse 38, For thus, listen, guys, it's crazy. Noah is teaching his sons and grandsons after the flood, Torah from Leviticus 19. And he's about to, in verse 38, say, and this is what Enoch did. And he commanded my grandfather Methuselah and my father Lamech to do this. Guys, this is amazing. Verse 38, for thus did Enoch. Enoch did this with trees. He obeyed the Torah of husbandry for the trees in the first, and bringing forth first fruits in the 5th year. Isn't this amazing? The father of your father commanded Methuselah, his son, and Methuselah, his son, Lamech. And then Lamech commanded me all the things which his father commanded him. This is him just explaining how Torah was passed down. Verse 39, I will give you commandment, my sons, as Enoch commanded his son in the first Jubilees, while still living, the 7th in his generation, so we know it's talking about Enoch and not Noah. He commanded and testified to his sons and to his sons' sons until the day of his death. Guys, I'm sorry to burst your bubble. If you've not seen my previous episode where I talk about where is Enoch now, he's dead. Enoch died. I actually gone through a full breakdown with a timeline and a chart. I show you how he did not just live 365 years, because that's just how much time he was on the earth before he was taken 300 years with the angels. I go into great depth, mix it with the book of Enoch, book of Jubilees, Hebrews 11, Genesis 5:23, all of it to show you how he lived 665 years. He lived a long time. Noah actually met and talked to Enoch, as we see, I think it's in 1 Enoch 85. And they're all of them doing Torah. All of them doing Torah, guys. All doing Torah. Enoch did spend 300 years with angels. And that I go into great depth with that, and you have to understand. You have to go see that video. But yeah, basically, just like Hebrews chapter 11, verse 39, says that everyone that's been mentioned in Hebrews 11, and Enoch is mentioned in Hebrews 11:5, everyone that was mentioned in Hebrews 11 in verse 39, it says they're all waiting to be perfected with all the other believers that are reading the book of Hebrews in that day, right? That means believers that haven't died and the believers that have died, all the way back to Adam. All of them are perfected together at the same time in the first resurrection. It's called the resurrection of the saints, the first resurrection event. Enoch is not in heaven. That's 3rd century Metatron literature. We don't consider that scripture or canon. It wasn't placed in any canons. It fails the theological test, Deuteronomy 18, a whole bunch of other places. We don't believe second and third Enoch are actual scripture. Those are added much later. First Enoch is legit. We've done 19 different videos explaining that on our channel. But ultimately, Enoch is dead. He's not alive forevermore. He's not already resurrected. He didn't beat Jesus to the eternal life part. Jesus is the first fruits of the first resurrection. He's the first of mankind to get eternal life. Everyone else is going to get it at the last trumpet, the 7th trumpet, the return of Yeshua. That's the timing. That's what the scriptures describe. So that's just why I thought I'd highlight that for everybody. We also go into Jubilees 8. Commander 777, I'm trying to get through all these passages. We've got 3 more chapters to run through real quick. I will be taking questions at the end, but my first party tonight is to get through the bulk of these chapters. Jubilees chapter 8. In the 29th Jubilee, in the first week, in the beginning thereof, Arphaxad took to himself a wife, and her name was Razu-Ajah, the daughter of Susan, the daughter of Elam. And she bare him a son in the 3rd year in this week, and he called his name Canaan. Now, guys, just for all of you who are wondering, Canaan is actually called Canaan, and you will not find him in the Masoretic. You will find him in the Septuagint. He's in Genesis chapter 10, the genealogy of nations under Shem. And he's also in Luke chapter 3, verse 36, because that was the Greek as well. So he's got three witnesses of who this guy is. He was someone in the genealogy. He's just been left out in the Masoretic. And that, there's a lot of speculation to why the Masorite rabbis would leave out this particular guy because I'm what I'm about to read. So verse 2, it says, and the son grew, this is Canaan, he grew, his father taught him writing. That's going to be Arphaxad, as far as I can understand. Yeah, Arphaxad taught him writing. He went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city. Does that sound like Torah, guys? This guy went to go seize for himself a city. Verse 3 says, he found a writing which former generations had carved in the rock. And he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it, and sinned owing to it. For it contained the teaching of the watchers in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and moon, and all the stars and all the signs of heaven. By the way, guys, that word transcribed it in the Greek, it doesn't mean he translated it. He's not speaking a different language. And in fact, this is before the Tower of Babel right here. They're all still speaking Hebrew, according to chapter 12 of Jubilees. It just means that he saw what was written on the rock and he transcribed it onto his own paper, rock, or whatever, papyrus. I don't know, piece of leather. I don't know what he wrote it down on. That's all that word means, is he copied it. Okay, this is your copy paste feature on your phone. But it was the teachings of the watchers from before the flood, and how they used to observe the omens of the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the signs in the heaven. Well, guys, this isn't just him stargazing. It's not. It wasn't that innocent. Let's look at the companion passages before we go too much further here. Deuteronomy 4:19 says, "When you look to the heavens and you see the sun and moon and stars," this is Yahweh speaking through Moses. It says, "When you look to the heavens and see the sun and moon and stars, all the hosts of the heaven, do not be enticed to bow down and worship what the Lord your God has apportioned to all the nations under heaven." Now, a lot of people think, well, see, that's how does that have to do with what he found with the watchers observing the omens of the sun, moon, and stars? Okay, well, worship the sun, moon, and stars is part of idolatry. And there was a process that went with that idolatry, a part of the ways of Baal and the ancient cultures and nations. Deuteronomy 18:9-12 expounds upon those processes. It says in verse 9, "When you enter the land that Yahweh your Elohim has given you, do not imitate the detestable ways of the nations there. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices his son or daughter in the fire, that practices divination or conjuring, or someone that interprets omens." Well, how do you do that? Where do you see the omens? By observing the sun, moon, and stars. Guys, this is also considered a part of sorcery. It's part of divination and conjuring, and this is a part of the occult behavior. It goes on in verse 11 and 12 to say, Don't let no one be found among you that may be casting spells, that consults a medium or spiritist, or inquires of the dead. For whoever does these things is detestable to Yahweh, and because of these detestable things, Yahweh your Elohim is driving out the nations that are before you. So, just to give you some surrounding context, guys, this is how we find context in Scripture. We got to read the rest of the chapter. So if I'd have just stopped at Deuteronomy 4:19, I wouldn't have understood what it means, why God would tell them, don't bow down to the sun, moon, and stars. Well, we know the sun, moon, and stars are not even physical idols that were crafted with hands, right? Those are things that God made. He's like, no, don't worship those. Don't bow down on those and worship those. There was a reason they did that, guys. It was a part of the occult. It was part of divining and determining and ciphering the omens that were in it. It was a part, exactly what we read from Jubilees chapter 8. The teachings of the watchers. And that's actually in 1 Enoch chapter 8 as well. And I can't remember the name of the angel, but it tells you actually the name of the rebellious angel in 1 Enoch chapter 8 that taught men the signs of the stars. So in the fourth year, let me go back here to, I think, verse 5. Now let's go to verse 4. So this is this Canaan guy, the son of Arphaxad. He found the teachings of the watchers, and he wrote it down. Why would you write it down? Why would you need it? Right? You don't need it unless you're going to maybe understand it, read it, learn it, practice it. You don't need it. You don't need to write it down. You should have found it. You should have said, hey, Grandfather Noah, I found this. You might want to check this out. Or even Shem or Arphaxad, or, you know what I'm saying? Hey, somebody, like, I found this. Isn't this interesting? But instead, no, he knew what it was. He knew what it was. He wrote it down. He says in verse 4, he wrote it down, said nothing regarding it, for he was afraid to speak to Noah about it, lest he should be angry with him on account of it. Of course, Noah would be mad. And he would probably distort it as soon as he found it written on the rock. He'd probably have the rock destroyed and completely busted up so no one could read it. Because these people start practicing this stuff. Okay? So in the 13th Jubilee, in the second week, in the first year thereof, this Canaan guy took to himself a wife. Her name was Milcah, the daughter of Medai, the son of Japheth. And in the fourth year, he begat a son and called his name Shelah. So now we got one of the sons of Shem marrying one of the daughters of Japheth. Okay? So two families are coming together. And they live in the same region. We're going to get that in Jubilees chapter 9 and 10 anyway. They're living in the same region, the Euphrates and the Chaldea area. So it's not uncommon that they'll be intermingling and seeing each other. So then he begets a son named Shelah. We do see that in Genesis 10 as well. For he truly said, surely I have been sent. Interesting perspective of himself, right? Verse 6, and in the fourth year he was born, and Shelah grew up and took to himself a wife, and her name was Muach, the daughter of Kesed, his father's brother. And in 31st Jubilee, in the 5th week, in the first year thereof, she bare him a son in the 5th year thereof, and called his name Eber. We all recognize that name. And he took to himself a wife, and her name was Azarad. That was the daughter of Nimrod, which is Nimrod. So now we got Genesis 10:8, we got Nimrod in the mix. Who was Nimrod a son of? Guys, we got all these families mixing together. In the 6th year thereof, she bare him a son, and called his name Peleg. For in the days when he was born, the children of Noah began to divide the earth amongst themselves. For this reason, he called his name Peleg. What's so funny is I've heard Christian apologists, preachers that are trying to explain evolution, which is pretty funny to me, because they're actually trying to explain this evolutionary idea of Pangea, which is mind-blowingly ridiculous, because the continents are literally connected due to the sea floor. But this theory of Pangea that's pushed in a lot of our second grade science books as a part of evolutionary teachings will say that the continents used to be all together, and that's why they kind of look like they fit, they really don't, because they're not the right sizes. That's a manipulated map. But that's what they teach kids, right? Oh, they show these little animations, all the continents being together, and then, oh, there was something that happened, the tectonic plates shifted, now they're all spread apart across the globe, which is not even real anyway. So they then say, well, they treat Pangea as if tectonic plates are big lily pads with continents floating on water, and that they can separate. They used to be close and they can separate. And I've heard preachers trying to defend that idea, which that's completely not even the way the ocean floor looks and works, and it's the most ridiculous theory. But they'll say this is why Peleg, they'll say, oh, it was post-flood and the earth was dividing up after the flood, and this is why I called it Peleg, because it means division. Whereas Jubilees tells you right here it has nothing to do with continent shifting. It has everything to do with Noah's sons dividing up the land. Because remember, we got all these kids. They splintered out just a little bit beyond Noah's reach, where the ark had settled in the mountains of Ararat, and they went down to this other mountain, and they built 3 cities around this mountain, east and south and west. Then now they're going to expand further. But who goes where? How do they determine that? They got the entire land of the world that's dried out from the flood, throughout the entire plane of the earth, untapped. So who's going to go and spread their legs, right? And which way do they go? How do they not fight about it? So it says they came together secretly, divided amongst themselves, but they did tell Noah. And this is going to be interesting. I have highlighted here in verse 10. It came to pass in the beginning of the 33rd Jubilee that they divided the earth into 3 parts, for Shem and Ham and Japheth, according to the inheritance of each. Now, in the first year, in the first week, check this out, guys, when one of us who had been sent was with them. This is the angel talking. The angel's talking to Moses. He's explaining all this history. The angel that's talking to Moses claims he was there when one of us who had been sent was with them. I imagine a lot of these higher authority angels have been all throughout the story, all throughout time. But I think it's fascinating. When one of us who'd been sent was there with them. So that means there was an angel with them when they're going through this supposedly, I'm guessing the elders, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and probably their firstborn sons, were all going through this with Noah to divide the land up. And that I just wanted to point that out, because we're gonna read about this here in chapter 9 and chapter 10 and how this matters, because it says we divided this land up and we made an oath according to this division of land in the presence of the holy judge and in the presence of Noah, our grandfather. Guys, there was an angel there, literally to say, okay, you get this land, you get that land. Okay, I like it. Good. No objection from Yahweh. That's crazy. Why does this matter? We're getting to it, guys. Bear with me. Jubilees 8:11-14. He called his sons, they drew near to him, they and their children, and he divided the earth into lots, which his 3 sons were to take in possession, and they reached forth their hands. They took the writing out of the bosom of Noah their father, and there came forth writings as Shem's lot, the middle of the earth. No, this isn't Lord of the Rings. Shem got the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself, and for his sons for the generation of eternity, from the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water, from the river Tina, and his portion goes towards the west, towards the midst of this river, and extends till it reaches the waters of the abysses, out of which this river goes forth and pours its water into the sea Miat, and this river flows into the great sea. And all that is toward the north is Japheth's, and all that is toward the south belongs to Shem. So, guys, unfortunately, I've spent multiple occasions over the last 2 or 3 years trying to decipher some of these names that are in here, because this is translated from the Greek. Trying to find some of these names that are in here to see exactly what this is talking about. As far as, I know it's in the Middle East. I get that much. And it's going to give us some, some ideas. Shem is getting pretty much the land of promise, extending all the way over to India. So he gets a huge swath of lands covering Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all those modern day places. So he's going to cover this big swath of the middle of the earth. I'm just giving you a big general overview, okay, from what we're about to read. Japheth, he's going to get, all the northern land areas, Russia, Europe, and Norway, the Netherlands, all that kind of stuff, the northern area, the northern lands. Ham seems to get most of Africa, the bottom portion of Saudi Arabia, and what I would guess are like, Australia and the Philippines and Malaysia and all those southern places like that. And by the way, did you guys know that there's actual archaeological evidence just about 2 hours outside of Sydney, I believe. Yeah, I believe it's Sydney, where they found this crevice, this cave with all these Egyptian hieroglyphs all over it, and it tells the story about how they brought a dead king there for a time, and then they came back and retrieved his body to go take him back to Egypt for proper burial. Well, that's the land that Ham got, was the land of Mitzrayim, right? Land of Egypt. So I think it's fascinating how that little dose of archaeological evidence would line up to this idea of what we're about to read with the portions that are given to Ham. So here in verse 13, and then it extends till it reaches Caroso, and then in the bosom of the tongue, which looks toward the south, and his portion extends along the great sea, extends in a straight line till it reaches the west of the tongue, which looks towards the south. For this sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian sea. Okay, outstanding. And then it turns from here towards the south, towards the mouth of the great sea on the shore of its waters, and extends to Afra. I'm guessing that's a early school Greek reference of Africa. And it extends till it reaches the waters of the river Gihon, to the south of the waters of Gihon, to the banks of this river. And then it extends toward the east till it reaches the Garden of Eden. Now, guys, as we've talked about before, I don't believe the Garden of Eden was on the ground, but this is the territory where the Garden of Eden used to be. So they would know. This is why they're going to describe things in and around the Garden of Eden. But the Garden of Eden itself, I don't believe it was on the ground still after the flood. It's never spoken about. It does talk about its region and how we're reading verse 19, how it's facing Mount Sinai, Mount Zion, but it's a walled-off structure. From my understanding, it's retrieved in and around the time of the flood. I don't think it was still here hundreds of years after the flood, but I do understand the reference here because there's descriptions of its location, basically. So I think that's interesting to me, because it does seem to be right around the area of Jerusalem and Bethel in the Middle East of what we would understand to be Israel of the Old Testament. So this could be, this is speculation, but it could be that territory, that area is why Jacob would call it the house of God, Bethel. So it's very interesting. But it goes and says that this, it's just talking about the pronoun it that it's using is talking about the geographical area that it's trying to explain and encompass. It extends toward the east till it reaches the Garden of Eden to the south thereof. To the south, and from the east of the whole land of Eden and of the whole east, it turns to the east and proceeds till it reaches the east of the mountain named Rapha, and it descends to the bank of the mouth of the river Tina. This portion came forth by lot for Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever until his generations forevermore. Noah rejoiced that this portion came forth for Shem and his sons, and he remembered all that he had spoken with his mouth in prophecy. For he had said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and may the Lord dwell in the dwelling of Shem. And Noah knew that the Garden of Eden is the Holy of Holies, and the dwelling of the Lord, and the Mount Sinai is the center of the desert, and Mount Zion is the center of the navel of the earth, and these three were created as holy places facing each other. So this gives us a really, really strong indicator of the idea of where the Garden of Eden was located in a very centralized direction. So I think it's fascinating because it's apparently in a triangular style facing between Mount Sinai, Mount Zion, and the Garden of Eden. So it's pretty interesting. But the whole point of Noah rejoicing about prophecy and this being the Lord will dwell in the dwelling of Shem, again, this is the New Jerusalem descends down onto this land being described as Shem. So this is why I would reference why he's speaking about where the Garden of Eden used to be and the land of Eden, Mount Sinai, Mount Zion, all this stuff is very important to the Father. Noah blessed the God of gods, who had put the word of the Lord into his mouth, and the Lord forevermore. And he knew that the blessed portion and the blessing had come to Shem and his sons unto the generations forever, the whole land of Eden, the whole land of the Red Sea, the whole land of the east of India, and on the Red Sea, on the mountains thereof, and all the land of Bashan, and all the land of Lebanon, and the islands of Kaftar. That's going to be the actual island of Kaftir in the Mediterranean Sea, and all the mountains of Senir, that's Mount Hermon and Amana, and the mountains of Ashur in the north, that's across the Euphrates and what we call modern day Iraq and Iran, and all the land of Elam, that's Iran, Ashur, Babel, that's Chaldea, Susan, Meadeh, and all the mountains of Ararat, all the region beyond the sea, which is beyond the mountains of Ashur towards the north, a blessed and spacious land. All that in it is very good. And for Ham came forth the second portion. It's beyond the Gihon towards the south, to the right, to the south of the garden, and it extends toward the south, and it extends toward all the mountains of fire, extend towards the west to the Sea of Atel, which that's the ancient word for the Atlantic Sea. And it extends toward the west till it reaches the Sea of Mauk, that is the sea into which everything is, which is not destroyed, descends. That's going to be your Indian Ocean, basically. So he's basically getting all of Africa, is what it's explaining. And it goes forth towards the north to the limits of Gadir, and it goes forth to the coasts of the waters of the sea, to the waters of the great sea, till it draws near to the river Gihon, and goes along the river Gihon till it reaches to the right, which is the south of the Garden of Eden. This is the land which came forth for Ham as the portion which he is to occupy forever for himself and his sons until their generation forever. And for Japheth came forth the third portion, beyond the river Tina, to the north of the outflow of its water, and it extends north, easterly to the whole region of Gog, and to all the country east thereof. It extends northerly to the north, and extends to the mountains of the Celts towards the north, and toward the Sea of Mauk, and it goes forth to the east of Gadur, as far as the region of the waters of the sea. And it extends until it approaches the west of Farah, and it returns toward Afrag. I don't know if that's a variation of the word Africa, and it extends easterly towards the waters of the Sea of Miat. It's very interesting. It extends toward the region of the river Tina in a northeasterly direction until it approaches the boundaries of its waters towards the mountain Rapha. I don't know where the mountain Rapha is. I've tried to research it in depth. Apparently, a lot of other people have in the past, and some people claim it's in France, which doesn't make any sense at all. And even the people that claim it's in France think it's speculation. There's also a city called Rafah currently today in Palestine in the Gaza Strip area, but there's no mountains there, so it's interesting. I have no clue where Rafah is. If I knew where the river Tina was and the river Rafah, I could probably draw you a detailed map from all these descriptions, but I have no clue where those two places are. Verse 29, this is the land which came forth for Japheth and his sons as the portion of his inheritance, which he possessed for himself and his sons and for their generations forever. 5 great islands and a great land in the north. So I'm just going to guess Japheth got North and South America, but either way. But it is cold, and the land of Ham is hot, or I should say Japheth got North America, and Ham would have, I mean, I don't know how the Americas played into this, or if they were even a part of it, but it's interesting to me. It tells you right here, verse 30, kind of gives you a breakdown just on the climate. The land of the great north, it's cold. The land of Ham is hot. The land of Shem is neither hot nor cold. It's a blend of cold and heat. It's very interesting. All right, Jubilees chapter 9, guys. So verses 1 through 4, it says, and Ham divided amongst his sons. The first portion came forth for Cush towards the east, and to the west of him for Mitzrayim, and to the west of him for Put, and to the west of him, and to the west thereof on the sea for Canaan. Shem also divided his sons. Now I want you guys to hear this real quick. Verse 1, this is super, super important. Look at verse 1. All right, so we went over like a huge overview, like a continental view of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now they got their land spread out. Now it's going to focus in. It's going to take a telescopic view, if you will. It's going to zero in on Ham with his portion that he was given. Now he's going to his sons, and he's saying, look, all right, I'm going to divide up my land amongst you guys. And we got the 4 sons of Ham, right? This is going to be Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. He starts off from east, and it starts going west. Okay? So it says in the very furthest east was for Cush. Then the land was given to Mitzrayim. A little bit west of that. A little bit west of that was for Put. And west, way beyond that, was for Canaan. Now, it actually goes on to explain, and it's very interesting because from my understanding, it looks like Canaan received, like, along the Atlantic coast, imagine cutting Africa into four quarters. It's almost like Canaan received along the southern, what am I saying this, the southwestern quarter of Africa, which would be like where Namibia is, and the countries surrounding that along the coast. So just think about that, right? That's the land he was supposed to get, but the story's about to unfold, all right? So it says here, verse 2, and Shem also divided amongst his sons, and the first portion came forth for Ham, his son, and to the east of the river Tigris till it approaches the east, the whole land of India. And on that Red Sea on its coast, the waters of Dedan, on the mountains of Mebri and Elah, on the land of Susan, all that's on the side of Phanak to the Red Sea and the river Tina. And for Asher came forth the second portion, all the land of Asher, Nineveh, and Shinar, to the border of India, and it ascends and skirts the river. And for Aphaxad came forth the third portion, all the land of the region of the Chaldees to the east of the Euphrates, bordering on the Red Sea, and all the waters of the desert close to the tongue of the sea, which looks towards Egypt, all the land of Lebanon and Sanir, which is Hermon, and Ammana to the border of the Euphrates. Then it goes on to say, and for Aram, there came forth the fourth portion, all the land of Mesopotamia between the Tigris and the Euphrates, to the north of the Chaldees, to the border of the mountains of Asher and the land of Arara. And there came forth for Lud the fifth portion, the mountains of Asher and all that appertaining to them, till it reaches the great sea, until it reaches the east of Asher his brother. And Japheth also divided the land of his inheritance amongst his sons. The first portion came forth for Gomer to the east, from the north to the side of the river Tina, and in the north there came forth for Magog all the inner portions of the north until it reaches the Sea of Miat. And for Madai came forth as his portion that he should possess from the west of his two brothers to the islands, to the coast of the islands. And for Javan came forth the fourth portion, every island and the lands which are toward the borders of Lud. And for Tubal came forth the fifth portion in the midst of the tongue, which approaches towards the border of the portion of Lud, to the second tongue, to the region beyond the second tongue, unto the third tongue. Guys, thanks for your patience. We're about to get to some things that are not as litigious. I know there's no maps on screen, so I just thank you for your patience. We're getting through this, guys. Verse 12. And from Mishak came forth the sixth portion, all the region beyond the third tongue, till it approaches the east of Gadir. And for Tiras came forth the seventh portion, 4 great islands in the midst of the sea, which reached to the portion of Ham, and the islands of Kamaturi came out by lot for the sons of Arphaxad as his inheritance. Thus the sons of Noah divided unto their sons in the presence of Noah their father, and he bound them all by an oath, imprecating a curse on every one that sought to seize the portion which they had fallen to him, which had not fallen to him by his lots. Okay, so this is interesting, guys. So this is what we have in Genesis 9. Sorry, I don't know why my nose is suddenly stopping up. It's so weird. It happens like almost every broadcast. I blow my nose before I start the broadcast. I sound fine. I'm fine throughout the day. As soon as I start the broadcast. And there's nothing in it to really even. It's just like this dryness. It's so frustrating. So, guys, this is this idea right here in verse 14, where it says they made this oath with Noah. And remember, the angels there too. And all the sons of Noah and their grandsons, they all got their little portion of land. They're all divided up. They're all in agreement. They all went into an oath together. And Noah said, if anyone breaks this oath, there's a curse upon you. What did he prophesy earlier in Genesis 9, 24 to 27 about 2-year-old Canaan? Ham got mad because he's like, oh, cursed be Canaan. He will be a servant to Shem and his dwelling. We're going to read it. Verse 15. And they all said, so be it, for themselves, their sons, forever, throughout their generations, till the day of judgment, on which the Lord God will judge them with a sword and with fire for all the unclean wickedness of their errors, wherewith they have filled the earth with transgression and uncleanness and fornication and sin. Guys, think about this. The sinners, the people that are considered sinners, that are not considered righteous, that don't take part in the first resurrection at the return of the second coming of Yeshua, they get resurrected. The wicked get resurrected at the great white throne judgment in Revelation 20, 11 through 15. That's, that says, so be it, for their sons forever, throughout the generations, till the day of judgment. When it qualifies the day of judgment, when the Lord shall judge them with the sword and with fire for all the uncleanness. Well, yes, we see Yeshua come back on the day of the Lord, and he judges people. The angels come and kill people, and they burn the land with fire. But the sons of Noah and the grandsons of Noah that could possibly break this oath, they're not going to be there on that day. Will they? They don't get resurrected back into a body and stand before Yeshua to be judged until the great white throne judgment at the end of the millennial reign. Revelation 20, 11 through 15, the land division that Noah made, that told all his sons and grandsons, look, you're bound with this oath. If you get, you're not supposed to take each other's land. This land is for you, and this land is for you, and this land is for you. Nobody take each other's land. If you do, you'll get the sword and fire at the day of judgment of the Lord. Like, this is a big deal. Revelation 20:11-15, I saw a great white throne, and the one seated on it. Earth and heaven fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne. There were open books, and one of them was the book of life, and the dead were judged according to their deeds, as recorded in the books. The sea gave up its dead, death and Hades gave up their dead. Each one was judged according to their deeds. Death and Hades were thrown in the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. If anyone was found whose name was not written in the book of life, he was thrown in the lake of fire. So, guys, this is where I've tried to talk about this in the past, but I believe this idea of being thrown in the lake of fire, it only says the angel of Satan, the beast and the false prophet, are the only ones that mention that they're thrown there alive. And I believe that's because they don't have physical flesh. It's not the same situation because they have this different type of spiritual body, so they can't be killed in the same capacity. This is why they're thrown in there alive. Everyone else who's judged before Yeshua that's considered wicked doesn't get eternal life. The angels kill them with the sword, as it talks about in the book of Enoch. They throw their dead body. Their soul has nowhere to go. There's Sheol's out of commission. Sheol's closed for business. It's not accepting souls anymore because there's no more resurrections awaiting anybody. This is at the very end of the story. So all the wicked that are resurrected back to a normal mortal body to stand judgment before Yeshua for the deeds done in the body while in the flesh, they're judged to death. They're killed by the sword by the angels, and that body and that soul still in that body is thrown in the lake of fire. And that's what Yeshua was talking about in Matthew 10:28. Fear God who can destroy both the body and the soul in Sheol. So that's, from what I understand about the justice administered through Yahweh and his angels, seems to be everyone in the mortal flesh, they're killed first and then thrown in the lake of fire. They don't, from what I understand, they're not thrown in there alive. It's only the beast, false prophet, and Azazel, from what I can understand, and the other rebellious angels, because they have spiritual bodies too that aren't exactly easily killed with the sword like a fleshly mortal body. Okay, so this is kind of I'm not saying like this is my understanding of putting pieces together, if I can put it like that. I don't want to insert my own eisegesis. I try to be as diligent as possible not to do that. This is just understanding the administration of the Torah that I see as examples in scriptures and what the Father declares in prophecy about what the angels do. It seems like those who are judged as wicked, that have been resurrected back to a mortal body, they are killed as a part of the administration of Torah for the justice of their wickedness that deserve death. So their body is killed before they're thrown in the lake of fire, because then that's where the body and soul are distinguished forever by the lake of fire itself. So just my understanding of it, my thoughts, but I could be wrong. So yes, the lake of fire is Gehenna. But the point is, they're making this oath with Noah, and it's happening. And the implication is, if you break this, you'll face judgment for this at the Great White Throne Judgment, which I think is just crazy. It's just wild that they would be talking about that even back then. Jubilees chapter 10. And this is where it gets spicy. So, because what we just read, what did we talk about? What Ham got his 2-year-old son Canaan was cursed as a result of Ham's bad behavior and not honoring his father. Noah talked about prophesying, Ham being in the dwelling of Shem, being a servant to Shem, and then also, which what we're going to see all throughout the rest of the Bible, but then we're also going to see what Ham actually does in chapter 10, okay? So here in chapter 10, verse 1-4, it says, in the third week of this Jubilee, the unclean demons began to lead astray the children of the sons of Noah, and to make error to destroy them. And the sons of Noah, they came to Noah their father, and they told him concerning the demons which are leading astray and blinding and slaying his sons. And he prayed before the Lord his God, and said, God of all the spirits of all flesh, who has shown mercy unto me, and has saved me and my sons from the waters of the flood, and has not caused me to perish as you did the sons of perdition. For your grace has been great towards me, and great has been your mercy to my soul. Let your grace be lifted up upon my sons, and let not wicked spirits rule over them, lest they should be destroyed from the earth. But do bless me and my sons, that we may increase and multiply and replenish the earth. Guys, this is the origin of unclean spirits. So just like Yeshua had to deal with everywhere in the Gospels, we also see Paul tries to explain that Ephesians 6:10-12. Finally, be strong in the Lord and the might of his power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can withstand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this world's darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So, guys, this is what we're going to read in Jubilees chapter 10. Satan, which came from the heavenly realms, is an evil force, a rebellious angel. He's not locked away. He's still out roaring around. He gets control over these unclean spirits in the book of Jubilees. It explains this also in Enoch as well. We get a little bit more explanation in Jubilees chapter 10, 5-9. It says, and you know how your watchers, the father of these spirits, acted in my day. As for these spirits which are living, imprison them and hold them fast in the place of condemnation. Let them not bring destruction on the sons of your servant, my God, for these are malignant and created in order to destroy. Let them not rule over the spirits of the living, for you alone can exercise dominion over them. Let them not have power over the sons of the righteous from henceforth and forevermore. And the Lord our God, he instructed us to bind all the demons, all the unclean spirits. And the chief of the spirits, mastema, that means animosity in the Greek, he came and said, Lord, Creator, let some of them remain before me. Let them hearken to my voice, and do all that I shall say unto them. For if some of them are not left to me, I shall not be able to execute the power of my will on the sons of men. For these demons are for corruption and leading astray before my judgment. For great is the wickedness of the sons of men. And God said, let the 10th part of them remain before mastema, that's Satan, and let 9 parts descend to the place of condemnation. So here's a little parallel real quick, just to give you some idea here. These demons, they know that they're under the control of Azazel, mastema, Satan, whatever you want to call it. They know that they're in the control of him. And they know the story. They know why they're there. We see them acknowledge this to Yeshua. They also know who the Son of God is, by the way. But they see them acknowledge this in Matthew 8, 20 through 29. When Jesus arrived on the other side of the region of the Gadarenes, When Jesus arrived on the other side of the region of the Gadarenes, he was met by 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. What do you want with us, Son of God? They shouted. Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? Now that word also means torment. You have to look at the translation. The Greek word there is torment, and that torment, of course, is when they're thrown in the lake of fire, right? They're destroyed. It doesn't mean eternal torture like we understand the English word torture today. You have to look at the Greek. The point is, the demons themselves, speaking to Yeshua, not only do they know he's not Yahweh come in the flesh, he's the Son of God, they know that. They also know there's an appointed time of their destruction. We see the origin of this in Jubilees chapter 10. 10 through 15, it goes on to say, and one of us, that's the angel speaking to Moses, he says, and one of us, Yahweh commanded that we should teach Noah all their medicines, for he knew that they would not walk in uprightness nor strive in righteousness. So we did, according to all his words. All the malignant evil ones we bound in the place of condemnation, and 1/10 of them we left that they might be subject before Satan on the earth. Now we explained to Noah all the medicines of their diseases, together with their seductions, and how he might heal them with the herbs of the earth. And Noah wrote down all things in a book as we instructed him concerning every kind of medicine. Thus the evil spirits were precluded from hurting the sons of Noah. And he gave all that he had written to Shem, his eldest son, for he loved him exceedingly above all his sons. And Noah slept with his fathers and was buried in Mount Lubar in the land of Ararat. So guys, we actually see this. This angel has been instructed to teach Noah medicines from the earth that could keep the demons from hurting the sons of Noah. We see this in the book of Tobit, chapter 6, 1-8, the story of Raphael, which I think is interesting because he was considered the angel that was over the spirits of men that brought healing. He's also mentioned in the book of Enoch, 1 Enoch 20, verse 1-6. It says here in Tobit 6, 1-8, Raphael is the actual angel that's accompanying Tobias on this journey to go get this money for his father. And they run along the way. They run into this girl who's oppressed by a demon, and Raphael, the angel, knows exactly how to help the girl. Check it out. Tobit 6, 1-8. And as they went on their journey, they came in the evening to the river Tigris, and they lodged there. And when the young man went down to wash himself, a fish leaped out of the river and would have devoured him. Then the angel said unto him, take the fish. And the young man laid hold of the fish and drew it into land. To whom the angel Raphael said, open the fish and take the heart and the liver and the gall and put them away safely. So the young man did as the angel commanded him. And when they had roasted the fish, they did eat it. And then they both went on their way until they drew near to Ecbatane. Now, then the young man said to the angel, Brother Azarias, to what use is the heart and the liver and the gall of the fish? And Raphael said to him, touching the heart and the liver, if a devil or an evil spirit troubles anybody, we must make a smoke thereof before the man or the woman, and the party shall be no more vexed. So he's basically saying, I had you do surgery on the fish, and you took out three things from the fish: the heart, the liver, and the gall. If you burn the heart and the liver in the presence of the evil spirit, they'll flee from tormenting and oppressing whoever they're messing with. Verse 80 says, as for the gall, it's good to anoint a man that has whiteness in his eyes, and he shall be healed. And we see Tobias take the gall later after he returns back home and goes to his father Tobit, and he actually heals his father's blindness, who had these like advanced, really bad cataracts, with the gall of the fish by putting it on his eyes. How would we know that? Unless the Book of Jubilees gives you plausibility and credibility for the idea that, oh, that's where this is. By the way, the Book of Tobit used to be in the Bible. I don't know why they took it out. 1800s they took it out. It used to be in even the American canons. It was part of the Deuterocanon, they would call it, which is a nonsense word. It doesn't mean anything. Some dude came up with this word called Deuterocanonical, which he determined 14 books out of the 80 books in the Bible were less important than the other 66. So that's where that term came from some just random dude. We don't give plausibility to random dudes. We judge the text for what it says. Does it pass the Deuteronomy 13 test? Does it keep it theologically consistent? And Tobit passes the test. If anyone's watching this right now, and if you're new to my channel, we've actually done a full breakdown on the Book of Tobit. If you're interested in the Book of Tobit, and that is, you go to my main channel, Kingdom and Context, and go to the playlists. Go to Honor of Kings Season 2, and we did 3 or 4 episodes fully breaking down the whole Book of Tobit. Okay? All right, so Jubilees 10, 16 through 20. 950 years Noah completed in his life, 19 Jubilees in 2 weeks and 5 years. In his life on earth, Noah excelled the children of men except for Enoch because of the righteousness. So basically saying that Noah was more righteous than everybody else except for Enoch, wherein Enoch was complete until his death. That's what that Greek word means, perfect. For Enoch's office were ordained for a testimony to the generations of the world, so that he should recount all the deeds of generation unto generation till the day of judgment. So this is why, guys, I referenced earlier in chapter 7, verse 28, it tells you directly, straight up, Enoch is dead. Okay? Enoch died. Enoch taught Torah to Methuselah and Lamech, and that was passed down to Noah, and he joined it among all of his sons. There's more than just Methuselah that Enoch had. Methuselah is just the biggest one mentioned, and that we get in Genesis 5. But Enoch had lots of sons, and he taught them all Torah. So it says, till the day of judgment. That's why I referenced Jubilees chapter 7 earlier, to tell you that he did die. If you read from our first episode we did, chapters 1 through 5 of Jubilees, it explains that Enoch in chapter 4, he was inducted into the Garden of Eden. There he sat to be a scribe. That's where he spent the 300 years with the angels, and that's where he scribed as the office that was ordained for him, to write down to recount the deeds from generation to generation till the day of judgment, leading up to the flood. So, guys, this is the idea that he lived leading up to a specific time period before the flood, and this is where he was still alive when Noah was alive and Lamech was alive, and he was still alive. He lived a long time. Like I said, 665 years according to my count from all the books put together. And that's why this statement would say this, that this is what he was asked to do. And that's where he went to spend the 300 years with the angels. Jubilees 4 explains that. And this was the purpose of what he was asked to do. It was basically to be a witness against mankind, for the Father to say, yeah, this is bad, so I will bring the judgment of the flood. Okay? So, verse 18. And in 33rd Jubilee, in the first year of the second week, Peleg took to himself a wife, whose name was Lomna, the daughter of Sinar. She bare him a son in the 4th year of this week, and called his name Ru. That means evil in Hebrew. For he said, behold, the children of men have become evil through the wicked purposes of building for themselves a city and a tower in the land of Shinar. For they departed from the land of east of Arad, eastward to Shinar. For in his days they built the city and the tower, saying, go to, and let us ascend thereby into heaven. They began to build, and in the 4th week they made bricks with fire, and the bricks served for them for stone, and the clay with which they cemented them together was asphalt, which comes out of the sea, out of the fountains of water in the land of Shinar. They built it. 43 years they were building it. Its breadth was 203 bricks. The height of the brick was 1/3 of one. Its height amounted to 5,433 cubits and 2 palms, and the extent of one wall was 13 stades, and the other was 30 stades. So, guys, I've tried to do my calculations as best I can on this. I talk about this in my Investigating Babylon series. I think it was episode 1. It seems like it was 1.5 miles tall, 5,433 cubits high. Seems, from my understanding of the cubit and how it translates today into American, Western metrics, it seems it was 1.5 miles tall. I apologize to our brothers that may be watching from across the pond. I don't know what that is in kilometers, but approximately 1.5 miles tall. It's pretty big, pretty tall building. Okay. I don't think anyone's built a building that tall since. I think the Burj Khalifa is like 0.5 mile tall, something like that. So, or 1 mile tall, I can't remember. So verse 22, it says, "And the Lord our God said to us, Behold, they are one people, and this they began to do, and now nothing will be withholden from them. So go, and let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech, that they may be dispersed into cities and nations, and one purpose will no longer abide with them till the day of judgment." Think about this, guys. This is crazy. No longer will, from this moment forward, all the nations will not have one purpose and will not abide as one purpose until the day of judgment. What does that even mean? What do we see? Revelation 17, 11 through 13. The beast that was and now is not is the 8th king, who belongs to the other 7, and he is going to destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received the kingdom, but will receive 1 hour of authority as kings, along with the beast. These kings have one purpose: to yield their power and authority to the beast. This is the collection of nations that come together with the Antichrist, the beast, the first beast, collectively together to fight Yeshua at his return. We didn't get this prophecy in Genesis 11, 5 through 9. It doesn't say that they're going to be scattered or confused and not have one purpose until the day of judgment. Isn't that fascinating that Jubilees use that extra content that makes sense of Revelation? Isn't that crazy? All this was spoken beforehand, guys. All of it was prophesied beforehand. Jubilees 10, 26 through 30. The Lord sent a mighty wind against the tower and overthrew it upon the earth. And behold, it was between Ashur and Babylon in the land of Shinar, and they called its name Overthrow. In the 4th week, in the 1st year, in the beginning thereof, in the 34th Jubilee, were they dispersed from the land of Shinar. Ham and his sons went into the land which he was to occupy, which he acquired as his portion in the land of the south. Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good, and he went not into the land of his inheritance, to the west, that is, to the sea. Instead, he dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. Guys, that's between the Mediterranean and the border. That is what we now call nowadays Israel. That is what in the scriptures we see as the land of Canaan. It was supposed to go to Shem, but Canaan went and settled there against the oath that they previously took. And the people call him out for this, but it doesn't matter. So in verse 30, it says, "And Ham, his father, and Cush and Mitzrayim, his brothers, they said to him, You've settled in a land that's not yours, and which did not fall to us by lot. Don't do this. For if you do so, you and your sons will fall in the land and be accursed through sedition. For by sedition you have settled, and by sedition will your children fall, and you shall be rooted out forever." So guys, when people come to you and they're like, why did Yahweh take the Israelites and have them attack all the people in the land of Canaan? What did they ever do? Well, for one, they were killing kids and drinking blood and doing occult rituals to the max. Genetic modification with giants, all kinds of stuff. Destroying the land, destroying the people, destroying the culture, destroying the genome of man, for one. For two, this wasn't their land to begin with. They took it by sedition. So this is fascinating because later on, both in Genesis and in Jubilees, like we'll get to later, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all have to battle Canaanite kings while they're sojourning in the land of Canaan. And they all win. So then the kings of Canaan become subject to Israel. What did Noah prophesy about Shem and his dwelling place? He'll be blessed of God. In the future, will be the dwelling place of Yahweh. But also, Canaan will be a servant to Shem. Pretty fascinating. Pretty fascinating, guys. We even see the Canaanites, become servants to Israel later in the days of David and Solomon. So it's fascinating because they continued to stay in the land by sedition. It wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't supposed to be called the land of Canaan. It's supposed to be called the land of Shem. It wasn't supposed to be the land of Canaan. It was never supposed to be the remaining portions that Joshua didn't take care of Gaza and Ashdod and the other place, and that we now call modern day Palestine. That was never supposed to be there. It was supposed to be the land of Shem. All the Canaanites are supposed to get Southwest Africa. It's crazy. So this is why it was such a big contentious point all throughout the Old Testament. And then we even see in Zechariah 14 and the millennial reign when Yeshua returns, Zechariah 14, 20 through 21, it says, on that day, holy to the Lord will be inscribed on the bells of the horses and the cooking pots in the house of the Lord. Will be the sprinkling bowls before the altar. Did you guys wonder if there's animals in Jerusalem? Well, those are definitely horses. Verse 21, indeed, every pot in Jerusalem and Judah will be holy to the Lord of hosts. All who sacrifice will come and take some pots and cook in them. And on that day, there will be no longer a Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts. What did Noah prophesy that Shem's area, Shem's territory that was given to him, would be the dwelling place of Yahweh? That's where the New Jerusalem's going to sit down, guys. And the promise is they'll no longer, this is a 1,000-year-old grudge match. There will no longer be a Canaanite who's there by sedition. They're still there. The hot spots that you see, not only are there Canaanites by heart, because they don't have a circumcised heart to Yahweh, people that are doing, the people that are doing occult behavior in Israel today, but literally, physically, geographically, in the area of Palestine, the Gaza Strip area. These are the 3 hot spots that were left over that were never fully taken by David or Joshua. There's been Canaanites in the land of Shem since the days of Noah. This is one of the things that Yahweh's like. It's not because they're people. Guys, this is not about ethnicity. This is not about race. A Canaanite can become an Israelite if they do the ways of Yahweh, okay? So not only are they from the extension of Canaan as far as their bloodline, but that doesn't mean they're cursed. They can repent, okay? But the point is, the Father's saying, look, not only physically, bloodline, there won't be any Canaanites in this land because this land wasn't given to them. And then spiritually, there'll never be a Canaanite in this house of the Lord ever again. Because everyone will be considered of Israel doing the covenant behavior of Israel, which is what is actually explained on the screen, Zechariah 14. So guys, yeah, long-standing family feud. Long-standing. Jubilees 10, 31 through 36. We're almost done. Dwell not in the dwelling of Shem. So this is Ham's father and 2 brothers saying, look, man, you're going to be cursed if you do this. Don't do this. He says right here, don't live in the dwelling of Shem, for to Shem and to his sons did it come by their lot. Cursed are you, and cursed shall you be beyond all the sons of Noah by the curse by which we bound ourselves by an oath in the presence of the holy judge and in the presence of Noah our father. It's that angel that I referenced, Jubilees chapter 7. He says, they divided up all this land when one of us went down there with them and was among them. So the angel was there, listening to it. Noah's there. Ham is actually trying to get Canaan to observe the Torah. So I know people try to put this thing on Ham like, oh, he was wicked. Look how wicked he was. Guys, what did we just read in the beginning of chapter 10? The sons of Noah, Ham, Japheth, and Shem, they come to Noah and they say, hey, these demons are messing with our children. That means Noah's grandchildren. And now we have Ham pushing his rebellious son Canaan to respect Torah, which is to respect not just the holy judge, which would have been the angel's decree over all of it, but their high priest of the grandfather Noah, plus the basic Torah of do not move the boundary stones. It's an abomination to Yahweh. Like, this is, a lot of people don't talk like this because they haven't read the book of Jubilees and they think that Ham is some sort of incestuous homosexual that, created some unholy race. Guys, all these theories that people come up with because of we don't have these books were literally used to be in the Bibles, they're taken out. This is very simple. And this is literally trying to say, look, bro, you know what you're getting into, and now you're breaking this oath we all went into. And literally you're going to mess with Shem. He's the son of Noah, and he's the righteous one among us. You're going to take his land? You're going to be cursed. They're trying to warn him not to do this. So take it for what you will, guys. But one of the last mentions in the book of Jubilees that we have of Ham is he's trying to encourage his son to follow Torah. You think you'll see Ham at the resurrection? I think there's going to be a lot of surprised, poorly informed believers at the resurrection who will see other people in the kingdom that they misjudged. So, verse 33, but Canaan did not hearken to them, that's his father and brothers. And he dwelt in the land of Lebanon from Hoth to the entering of Egypt. He and his sons until this day. Until what day? Until this day that Moses is on Mount Sinai having this conversation with the angel. Yeah, they all know why it's called the land of Canaan. And it says in verse 33, for this reason, the land is named Canaan. Japheth and his sons went towards the sea and dwelt in the land of their portion. Medai saw the land of the sea, and it did not please him. But guess what happened? So here's the counterpoint, right? Canaan didn't like the land he was given, so he took some of Shem's land. One of the sons of Japheth, Medai, he didn't like the land he was given, but it says he begged a portion from Ham and from Asher and Arphaxad, his wife's brother, and he dwelt in the land of Media, near to his wife's brother until this day. He called his dwelling place the dwelling place of his sons Media, after the name of their father Medai. So guys, think about this. We have one grandson, Canaan, who's like, I don't like what I was given. I'm going to take what I want and break the oath. The other guy's like, well, I don't like what I was given. And the other brothers gave of their inheritance to him willingly. Like they can do that because it's their inheritance to give. He's not taking it by sedition. And it was okay. That's all. What would have happened if Canaan would have just asked Shem respectfully? No, because this is what Noah knew. This is why Noah said, cursed be Canaan. He knew the heart that was going to happen. Jubilees is a very powerful and important book, guys. Torah everywhere throughout Jubilees. Explanations for scripture, things that's not explained to you in the canon, not just with the history of the land of Canaan and Genesis 9 and why Noah is doing sacrifices in Genesis 8. Not just all that, but tons and tons of Torah about the feast days and the new moons and all the sacrifices, who the high priesthood, how it follows that, and where even Levi came from, why Levi was chosen, all this stuff. Jubilees is super important, guys. There is a ton of reasons why Judaism, who rejects the Father and the Son and has their own traditions and idolizes Moses in the first 5 books, but secondary all the other prophets, there's a reason why Judaism would reject this book, because this book destroys a lot of their theology and a lot of their prejudicial racist theology as well that's built into Judaism. So no wonder they told people to stop reading this book in the 1st century AD. All right, guys, I appreciate everybody. I'm going to take off for the night. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully that this is worth sharing. Hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment if you enjoyed it. That also helps the algorithms for other people to find it. And thanks for everybody for being willing to be here with me and study the scripture with me. I think that's really fun. Not a lot of people like to do that. So those of you who are here with me to the end, looks like there's still 96 people here watching. So to me, it's amazing. Just people that love to dig into the word. I really appreciate all you guys. Whether we all agree on every minor detail or not, we love the Father and the Son. We know His word. That's to me, that's amazing. So that's rare. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do. Appreciate you. We'll see you next time.